Okay friends, thank you for joining me here impromptu live stream. I'm going to share with you today 5 plant-based staples that I am absolutely loving right now. These are forming a huge part of my diet right now. I'm not going to share with you anything particularly micro. Let me just adjust my camera here. It's all wonky, I've just realized. Forgive me folks. I'm not going to discuss any sort of magic superfoods with you today. I realize the lighting is shocking as well. Let me see if this makes a difference, folks. Bear with me a moment. Let me know in the chat. Is that any better? Seems marginally better, doesn't it? I'm not going to share with you any magical superfoods today, any particularly micronutrient dense foods either. Maybe there's one caveat to that, which you'll see in a second. Really, everything I'm showing you today is a large staple in my diet. Staple's the key word, it's in this title, so you already know. But these things make up a decent portion of my diet, is what I should say. They form a bulky part of my diet. And these are things I've been relying on for several weeks, if not months, many of them. I am, like many of you out there, fairly repetitive. I am fairly happy to eat, roughly speaking, the same sorts of meals, the same sorts of foods day in, day out. In fact, if I had one major critique of my overall diet, I would say sometimes there isn't as much nutrient diversity, as I could potentially have. But then you get this whole debate, and this is obviously what I'm working on with my clients all the time, of, you know, what the textbook says in terms of making sure you're getting exactly the right amount of selenium, magnesium, potassium, and so on. And then also what you can actually adhere to day to day. There's that practical element. Ideally, we want as close to, you know, a nice, diverse, rich, well-balanced diet as possible, quite obviously. That should go without saying. But in a practical sense, the big question to raise is it always worth that extra effort or the extra inconvenience, sometimes the extra risk, to push it just to get a little bit more from your diet? Well, it's a valid question. Now, the textbook would say, yeah, of course it's worth it to optimize your health and well-being. In a practicality sense, I'm a coach, so rather than a scientist, so the way I analyze things is, all I would say, what I try to do at least, is put more of a pragmatic hat on sometimes with these things, if that makes sense. That aside, I just wanted to lay the foundation for what I'm going to show you here today. Let's get into it. Let's get into the juicy stuff, folks. So number one here, and I don't know how this will surprise some of you, is Tofu. Tofu, this is the brand I use often. There's a couple of main tofu brands here in the UK. The other one is it Cauldron or Calderon? I can't quite remember the pronunciation, but usually I go for this one here. So it's just regular firm tofu, folks. Really, really good. Tofu, wonderful source of protein, a little bit of fat in there too, of course. Great amino acid profile. Tofu for me is something that it's been in my diet since going vegan, in and out of my diet since going vegan, but I've had a good run with it for these past 6 months or so because I've been doing a bit more resistance training versus so much cardio, which is what I was typically doing. I was about to say several years back, but I was doing lots of resistance training as well. But for the past 12 months, mostly I've been doing cardio, the past 12 to 18 months. However, in the past 6 months particularly, during this whole COVID stuff, when we've been, you know, when everything's been shut down, my tennis club, you know, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, shut down. Obviously, I've been able to do running, I've been able to do walking. Tennis has reopened again for me now, but weight training is just something that I've really got back into again over the past 6 months or so. So just being a little bit more conscious to get a touch more protein in my diet. My diet before this was not particularly protein sparse anyway. I was having lots of beans. Again, you pick up protein, as many of you know, from the likes of whole grains, from the likes of oats, from the likes of brown rice, and so on. You do pick up protein here and there, but if you do need or you aspire to a very high protein intake, I won't BS you. A plant-based diet, you do have to think about it a bit. It isn't difficult, it isn't impossible, but you do have to do a bit of planning. So for me, tofu has been something that I've added in lately. What do I do with it then? Usually, what do I do with it? I'm stumped on that. Usually, what I've been doing lately anyway is cutting it into cubes and actually baking it in the oven. Drizzling on a bit of lemon, lime, maybe cooking it with some red bell peppers as well. And I'm using that as a topping to whether it's a rice dish, maybe sometimes pasta, maybe sometimes just a sort of a veggie salad bowl that you guys sometimes see me make on my Instagram page and whatnot. So tofu, nice little addition to those. So that is one of the staples that might surprise you. Now, then there's a question, because obviously this video is all about what I'm doing. And this is one thing I should have said from the start, but it's kind of boring to say. You guys just want the juicy stuff. You want to know what you're eating, right? But it is worth me saying that you know, you and I, we probably have very different goals. For me now, I'm in that weight maintenance phase. That probably isn't relevant to you right now. You know, I'm talking about my protein demands now increasing a little bit. Maybe that isn't relevant to you if you're not doing so much exercise and certainly so much resistance training. You still need some anyway, of course. And if you're doing lots of cardio, you want a bit of protein there as well too. But again, lots of people over-egg the whole protein thing, pardon the pun there. So it's worth saying that you and I are very different people. Our energy requirements, our activity levels, our height, our age, gender, so on and so forth, all of those things that do indeed make a difference. Genetic predisposition too, of course, it's worth mentioning, although many people sort of overhype the role of genetics, but it is absolutely worth mentioning. And so it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, that you don't necessarily want to copy and paste exactly what I'm doing. There might be good rules of thumb and templates in there, of course. That's why I do those day of eating videos, but there has to be some modifications for you. That can seem daunting for people. Then people are like, okay, Ryan, but what modifications do I need to make and how, and so on and so forth. Watch my different videos for that sort of nuance, but yeah, maybe you don't need so much of this, but for me, it's been a welcome part of my diet. What's next on this list? I tell you what, we'll go to here. Lots of you know I'm a sucker for this. I love this. I love my morning cereal bowls, folks. And 9 times out of 10, those cereal bowls contain it's usually this brand, this Jordan's Natural Muesli. It's about the best one you can get in the UK. Really, really good. Let me read the ingredients actually on this. So whole grain cereals make up 67% of this. Wheat flakes, oat flakes, barley flakes, dried fruit and nuts, sultanas, raisins, chopped dates, sliced almonds, and hazelnuts. So hazelnuts as well, one of the best nuts out there. So yeah, taste-wise anyway, for sure. But good nutrients too in hazelnuts. But yeah, this is absolutely, for me, my favorite cereal of all time. This is just so clean as cereals get. No added sugar. Not that I'm fearful of a touch of sugar, but no added sugar, no nasties in there, no oil. Really good, really, really clean. And it's a very small portion because there's a lot of people watching this and they'll be thinking, Ryan, I believe I should be staying away from the fat so much. You mentioned that this has, you know, almonds and hazelnuts. What about things like dried fruits like dates and raisins? I hear they're not so good for weight loss. All true, folks, all true. If you are looking to lose weight, you don't want the likes of dried fruit and nuts and seeds necessarily to make up a massive part of your overall diet. They certainly can a reasonable amount, but these measurements, they're really, really good. This still falls under the bracket of being low in fat. For example, per portion here, per serving, which I absolutely, I mean, 3x, 4x. I mean, this serving here, what is this, a 30-gram serving? It doesn't actually say, but it's probably a 45-gram serving per portion. Yeah, I absolutely smashed through that. I have way, way, way more than that. But per serving, it's only 1.8 grams of fat. So this is still compared to 30 carbohydrates, and 4.5 protein. So 4.5 grams protein. So this is still under the camp of low fat, believe it or not. It isn't a crate, you can probably not quite see in there, but it is largely those whole grain cereals, those wheat and oat flakes, barley flakes, and so on before you get to those other things. So for me, it's great. What I do though is fill this up in a bowl, throw in some soy milk or almond milk, oat milk, something like that. And then I'll actually throw in a bunch of berries, whether it's blueberries, I'm using blueberries and raspberries predominantly at the moment because that's what I have at the mo. But, you know, you can throw on apples, you can throw on banana, you can throw on pear, whatever will go well in cereal, whatever you like in cereal. And that is a great way to start the day for me. And if I had to guess as to the amount of times I've had this particular brand of muesli over the past, what should we say, 12 months, I would probably say, and I think we just had a leap year, didn't we? Or was that 2019? I can't remember. But either way, I think I've probably had this at least 300 days of the year, seriously. So most days I will have this. I do like bran flakes, I like shredded wheat. You can find sort of wheat bisques and whatnot as well, a Weetabix style type thing, and they're great as well. But for me, most of the time it's this. Sometimes I use a combination of many of those things, but for me, that's an amazing way to start the day. What's next on the list? Staple number 3. If you're just joining me, folks, I'm running through my 5 plant-based staples that are forming a massive part of my diet right now. Really loving these foods. Apologies, the video quality today is absolutely shocking. I don't know why it's just the lighting in here. I look really, really pale skin today. It's winter here in the UK, so I have a genuine excuse, but I can assure you I'm very well, I'm happy, I'm feeling good. So yeah, here we go then, the next one. What is this? This is whole grain, spelt spaghetti. And I talk a lot about whole grain pasta because things like pasta get a bad rap, don't they? They get put in that sort of bad carbohydrates group. Not at all, folks. There is a difference, a real objective difference between pasta that's made from white flour and pasta that's made from something like whole wheat flour or spelt. Actually, I usually go for whole wheat, but they only had spelt in, so I picked up this. And I love these. And basically what I'm doing at the moment, again, if you follow me on Instagram, you realise that I do have a decent amount of pasta now. I have it at least twice a week, I would say, on average. So it's still not a massive part of my overall diet, but twice a week on average. But this is such a great staple when I'm maybe a little bit bored of things like brown rice or bulgur wheat, which rarely happens, frankly, folks. But what I love to do with this is just add in a load of veggies. So I throw the pasta in the pot, I'll add in various vegetables. We're thinking mushrooms, we're thinking bell pepper, we're thinking broccoli, maybe some spinach or kale or something like that. And bit of onion, maybe a bit of garlic, or at least onion and garlic powder if I don't have those for flavour. What else do I do? Sometimes a bit of avocado for those fats in there. And yes, you could put avocado in pasta, just don't use a tomato sauce because that's a real contrast of flavours there, that's a real clash. But it actually, if you've got a nice ripe avocado, it gives it a really creamy taste and texture, so I really enjoy that. So, and you don't then need a sauce, believe it or not, when you have a nice creamy avocado in there. So that's what I often am doing with these at the moment. You'll see these if you follow me on Instagram. So I think in my previous YouTube Day of Eating videos, I think I have had pasta once or twice, but that probably doesn't really give context as to how much I have it. That still would suggest that I don't have it all that often. In and amongst the 6, 7, 8 Day of Eating videos I've made, if I've only had it once or twice, that doesn't really illustrate how much I have it. No, actually, that probably is about right. I take it back. That probably is about indicative of how much I have it. But yeah, so this is forming a decent part of my diet. Now, I'll be met with the obvious question on this, which is, right, okay, that works for you, you're maintaining weight, but should I be avoiding pasta? This depends on a couple of things, folks. One, the type of pasta you're having. Again, I recommend whole wheat, spelt, or like a bean or veggie pasta or something like that. Although some of those veggie pastas like zucchini pasta, they're so sparse in calories, they really don't cut it in terms of feeling full and satisfied. So, yeah, so one, depends on what type of pasta you're having. Two, what you're having it with. Loads of people are loading a bunch of fat, dairy products and animal meats on there as well and whatnot. Maybe oil. No, oil would be a bit strange with pasta. But no, sometimes if people have a pasta salad, they'll put oil on that. And that's what's ruining it, folks, not necessarily the pasta itself. So if you get the right sort of pasta and you top it with the right sort of things, like maybe my lentil marinaras that you sometimes see me do, or in the example I gave earlier, just a bunch of veggies and maybe some avocado for that creaminess and flavour, you're good to go. That's a good, healthy, weight loss encouraging meal right there. So yeah, and then of course it depends what else you're doing. That should go without saying. If you are waving the finger at pasta, you're pointing, the finger at pasta, you're giving pasta the blame for your lack of weight loss results right now. But there's a load of other unhelpful, let's say, things in your diet. Well, that's probably not the pasta that's pushing you over the edge. It might just be the entirety of everything you're doing, and even then there'll be some things that are contributing far more damage to your diet than the pasta itself, if that makes sense. So generally it depends on one, the type of pasta you're eating, two, what you're having that pasta with, and three, what the rest of your diet looks like. If you fit it in and it's part of, again, a nicely balanced, I hate that term, but balanced plant-based diet, it can absolutely have a place in a weight loss friendly healthy eating plan, for sure, in my mind. Just make sure you're combining it with the right things, I would say, and not having crazy amounts of it. Like if you are plateauing a lot right now and you're having a lot of pasta, try switching out to the equivalent amount of brown rice or bulgur wheat, millet, barley, something like that, and you will drop your calories, and that might be the edge you need to start seeing a result. But that's only really if you're having loads and loads of pasta right now. Okay, what's the next one? I can't remember what we've covered. This is a bit of an exception to the rule, because I said at the start, didn't I, for those that have been here from the start or watching the replay, that I would only be throwing out real staples today, hence the title of this video. Big, bulky things that make up a big part of my diet, rather than like little superfoods or anything like that here and there. Try this one magic food to lower your cholesterol or anything like that. Nothing too cliche like that. But this one food isn't necessarily a typical sort of starchy staple. It isn't necessarily a food that makes up a massive bulk of my diet. But I had to include it today because I do feel that by definition of what a staple is, this is there for me because it's there, it's every day of my diet. It doesn't make up a big part of my calories every day, but it does in terms of the volume of the food I eat. And what I mean by this, rather, what I'm talking about here, is mushrooms. Mushrooms, absolutely amazing. Let me give you, I've got a little list here, some mushroom stats. Rich in B vitamins, of course, which B12 is the one that many vegans are, of course, worried about, but everyone generally, I would suggest, should be worried about. Very low in calories, of course. Great thermic effect to these foods. Google thermic effect if you're not sure what I mean by that. Very interesting subject. They may well boost the immune system, anti-cancer function. A little bit of iron there, a bit of potassium, and they are surprisingly, people don't realize this, surprisingly high. I've just realized, like, just the way the light is bouncing off this, you probably can't even tell it's a mushroom. It's just a closed cup mushroom. Very high in protein as well, surprisingly. Not very high in protein, surprisingly high in protein. My favorite thing about them, and the reason why they've made my list today, is because I think they're a great utility food. I was one of those kids that never liked mushrooms, and actually even up until maybe 2 to 3 years ago, it wasn't that I was opposed to them 2 to 3 years ago, I just never really took to them. I never really had them all that much, maybe only when I was eating out. But recently, I would say again, the past year or so, this is something that's come into my diet an awful lot, more and more and more. They go great, actually, with the pasta dishes. I very rarely have a pasta dish without mushrooms. And the great thing is, as I say, they're versatile. So you can put them in your stews. You can have them with potatoes. You can have them in soups. You can have them just in your regular, this sounds odd to people, but sometimes if I just have a regular rice and bean bowl that you guys often see me have, I just chop up a bunch of mushrooms and throw that in there as well and get them in. So for me, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Great nutrient profile there and very versatile. So they've been forming a bigger part of my diet, and especially, as I mentioned with that, when I was talking about the tofu, with my new increased protein requirements right now. This, again, it's only a small amount, but just adding a few more of these into your diet can increase the amount of protein in one of my meals by, 5, 6, 7 grams here and there. So it's really handy to do. That's a lot of mushrooms, but really, really good in that regard. So that's my 4th staple today, folks. Before we cover the final one here, and it'd be interesting to see if anyone's live with me now. I know it's a bit of a funny time for many of you here. I'm doing this very, very early, so there's not so many people that will be catching the stream outside of Europe, certainly. But if you are with me here now, I'd love you to try and predict the final one. I'm not sure that you'll be able to. I don't think it's particularly a surprise. Maybe like the tofu would be a surprise for you guys to hear me have. But I don't know how guessable it is. I think a lot of other people would maybe predict something like potatoes or something like brown rice. So it'll be interesting to see if you can predict what my final one here is, folks. But I do want to tell you about my 21-day plant-based accelerator. So if you are looking for a meal plan that includes lots of wonderful plant-based staples so you can guarantee weight loss success, check out the 21-day plant-based accelerator meal plan. I'll link it down below. It tells you exactly what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, although there's a big caveat on the how much because you will need to modify it for you over time. It covers troubleshooting tips if the plan doesn't seem to be working out for you, what to do to speed up results, what to eliminate, what to focus more on, so on and so forth. Observation techniques there, grocery shopping tips, of course all the recipes you need for this. So it really is a done-for-you plan in the sense that it literally just tells you exactly what to do. Some people, they need that sort of structure. They are good with watching lots of the YouTube videos. Maybe they've read some books themselves, but they just want to be told exactly what to eat, when to eat, and so on. Well, the Accelerator meal plan could be a great place to start for you. So I'll link it down below in the description box. I'll actually put it in the live chat now. I'll pop a link to it in the live chat now, and you guys can check that out. At naturalweightlossmastery.com. Someone in the chat guessing that the final staple for me is zucchini. No, but that's a great guess. Again, the thing with zucchini, and this, I suppose my mushrooms here were a bit of an exception to this rule. The thing with zucchini is it's not really a big staple of my diet. It doesn't make up a lot of the calories I eat every day, if you see what I mean. And actually, zucchini is one of those things that if you asked me this question a year, 2 years back, I'd be like, yeah, I have zucchini every day. But frankly, I've not been having it so much lately for no particular reason. Well, no, the particular reason is I don't have that many meals that zucchini suits as much as I did a couple of years back. So that's why. Final staple then, folks, after that brief little sales pitch on my 21-day accelerator plan. Chickpeas. Now, admittedly, I am not doing half as many rice and beans style dishes as I was years and years ago. Just preference. I probably exhausted that stuff. And for me now, there's just different tastes and flavors I'm enjoying right now. So I'm sure I will segue back to the rice and beans bowl. Don't get me wrong, folks. I'm still loyal to my rice and beans brothers, but it's just something that, yeah, it's just slow. It's not a conscious effort. It's just slowly weaned out of my diet. Weaned isn't the best word for it, but it's slowly found its way out of my diet. But so I'm still having rice and beans dishes a couple of times a week, just not as frequent is what I'm trying to say there. That would have saved a whole load of spiel. Now you've got the update. But what I am doing a lot with chickpeas at the moment, and especially I like these in the summertime, which is obviously finishing now here in the UK, sadly, is hummus. So I'm using chickpeas, I'm using tahini, nutritional yeast, bit of lemon juice, bit of water, a bit of salt, cumin, chili flakes, blending that up, and I get my lovely hummus that keeps for a couple of days, and I use that as a topping to various dishes. So that is largely what I'm using chickpeas for right now. In fact, I think this year I've used chickpeas, definitely used chickpeas more for hummus than I have just for, clean whole chickpeas, if you will, with like rice, like I used to quite a lot back in the day. So yeah, loving chickpeas right now. I probably don't need to sell you on the benefits of these. And sorry, I should say garbanzo beans for my friends across the pond. I'm sure you have heard of chickpeas anyway, but yeah, garbanzo beans. I don't need to sell these to you. They are nutrient packed, like many in the legume category, especially the bean category. Rich in many, many wonderful things. I mean, the plant protein is something I've obviously referenced several times in this video because I am doing more weight training. Again, I'm not too worried about it. It's not like every day I'm thinking, right, I need more protein. I'm just thinking more consciously of protein than I was 6 months ago, a year ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, if you see what I mean. So chickpeas, really, really great staple for me. And that is it, folks. Those are my 5 plant-based staples. Let me run through them once more in no particular order. I'll try and remember which order I did them, so it'll probably be no particular order. Tofu, of course. My lovely natural muesli. Jordan's is the one I use here in the UK. Yes, that is vegan. Whole grain spelt spaghetti. Chickpeas, of course. And the good old mushrooms. So those are my 5 plant-based staples. Let me know, folks, your questions. If you have any questions, I've got 5 or so minutes. If there are any questions in the chat, I appreciate there probably won't be that many questions in the chat, given the time, as I say, I'm recording this is probably not so helpful for people elsewhere outside of Europe, the time I'm filming this right now, and it is, of course, a working day for the vast majority of adults out there. So, yeah, let me know if you do have any questions, but I am pretty ready to shoot in case there aren't any. Chickpeas are very versatile. They absolutely are, yeah, for sure. Got your last 10 pounds program. Love that you have exercise included. Great, thank you. Hope that really serves you well. It's my pride and joy, the last 10 pounds program. It's actually the last product I released. And I think it'll be the last product I release for a while. There will be another cookbook at some stage, but frankly, I've been putting that off and off for various reasons, another cookbook. So the last 10 pounds program is definitely going to be maybe the only product I actually released this year. Have I only done that this year? I think so. So yeah, I'm glad you're really enjoying that. What do I put on my muesli? A plant milk, and then I add a bunch of fruit. So raspberries, blueberries right now at the moment. But depends what fruit I've got in. Apples, pears work nicely with muesli for me. Strawberries, really, really good. But generally berries on muesli for me. Banana would be another good option. I'm not the biggest fan of bananas. I know how terrible as a vegan. But yeah, so you could try bananas if you like those. But yeah, generally, whatever fruit I've got. And then sometimes, although this is a bit of fat content anyway, sometimes I'll put some flax or chia seeds on them as well. Stefan says, how long would you recommend for a transition to a plant-based diet? Honestly, Stefan, I know this sounds a bit crazy, and I could sort of meet you in the middle here and give you a nice sort of baby steps approach. But my honest recommendation is instantaneously, imminently. Why not? Why not? There was one of the live streams I did back in earlier this summer. There was, I think the gentleman's name was Bogdan Bogdan actually commented saying, Ryan, I'm transitioning. Hopefully by, I think he said Christmas time or the new year, I'll be fully vegan. And I just challenged him on the chat. I said, Bogdan, if you do this for 7 days and you send me evidence that you've done this by sending me food photos to my email, there's a bit of trust involved there, but food photos to my email and I can see there's no animal products here, I'll give you something free from my website. And Bogdan did it. I would like to know how Bogdan's getting on, actually. It'd be nice to see if he's still sticking with it. Otherwise, the exercise was completely pointless. But that just pushed him over the edge, and he just committed to it there and then. So it's brilliant. So just an illustration, Stefan. Yeah, you have to be a bit tough to be able to do that. And it's nice to have someone to hold your feet to the fire, and maybe you don't have that. But my honest answer is imminent. It should be immediate. I mean, if this is something you absolutely know you've got to do, a lot of the other resistance you feel to this is just stories. You might have some genuine valid questions that need answering, but there's probably also, I imagine, you know, I'm presuming a couple of things here, but presuming a couple of things here, but you know, there's probably a lot of emotional blockage here too. And if it is the case that it's a lot of emotional blockage and you know why you're doing this and you actually have a backup plan and an answer to everything, and it's just the final bit of resistance that's very emotional for you because of the story you have of meat and dairy products from the past, or what if you go to this social event, so on and so forth, then, although the social event question is a good one, it's a valid one, but if it's very emotional for you, then it should be imminent. It should be imminent. Now again, just to balance that out and play devil's advocate, maybe some people are more likely to stay with this long term if they transition in a slow and manageable manner rather than all at once. And frankly, I didn't do it overnight. It was over the course of a month and a half that I sort of transitioned, although I actually didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm transitioning to a plant-based diet, I'm going to go vegan. That wasn't actually my thought. It was just really, oh, more plant foods would be better, was actually my first thought. It was never, oh, get rid of the meat and the dairy completely. I never actually had that in my mind. And then when that clicked, it was a lot more instantaneous. So for you, I'd just challenge you, Stefan, like, what's stopping you doing this right now, today? Because if you think about it, and I know this sounds very simplistic, but if you just break it down, all this is right now, because a lot of people get daunted at the idea, oh my goodness, I'm doing this forever now, or I'm doing this for the next year, or I'm going to try this for the next 6 months. A lot of people get daunted by that big sort of bold claim or desire or aim, let's say, intention. What you could do is just break it down into every meal. Okay, the next time I eat, it's going to be 100% clean, plant-based, healthy, and also vegan. And when you just break it down into every decision like that, it just makes it a bit more, I don't know, it's closer, isn't it? It's a little less daunting. It's a bit more manageable. It's, okay, the next meal. Okay, when's my next meal? I'll probably have it in a couple of hours when I have lunch. What's that going to be? What's that going to be? So rather than thinking about 7 days down the line, 1 month down the line, a year down the line, you sort of break it down into each food decision, which, I don't know, maybe that sounds a bit simplistic to you, Stefan, but honestly, that's one really helpful way of looking at it. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to this, but of course the ideal answer is as quickly as possible for your sake from a health perspective, and of course for the, not to be uber cliche, but the animal's sake. There is no way of getting around the idea that there's no way of arguing that there's a better approach than that. For me, there is no way that somebody can sit here and they can tell me that if they go vegan or plant-based in a month's time, it's better than doing it right now. Nobody can convince me of that. They might find that it's more doable initially, but still, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, for the results of you and for the results of the ethical side of things, it's got to be imminent. It's got to be imminent, really, hasn't it, from an ideal perspective? But I appreciate for many people that isn't so practical. And if you feel that that would be a struggle, yeah, you can just transition slowly. Maybe for you, start with breakfast and lunch, and then maybe later on you add in, you know, that 3 or 4 p.m. snack, and you make sure that's plant-based and vegan. Then a week later you do dinner, and over the course of a couple of weeks you get there with this sort of gradual baby step approach. For some people that probably is a wise move, but ultimately the faster, I think, the better. Can you transition from the slim macros into the toned macros, or go straight into toned? I think I understand the question, but not quite. Not quite. I presume you're asking me the difference between weight loss and then muscle gain, or maybe even just a bit of toning and maybe more targeted fat loss rather than general weight loss, which also includes muscle loss. And how that would differ in terms of your macronutrient ratios and breakdown. I presume that's the question. I don't really get what you mean by can you transition or go straight into it. Do you mean should you do it slowly or straight into it? It depends on your goals. It depends on have you just had a radical switch in your goals? Have you lost a bunch of weight and now you want to do a bit of body recomposition? You're happy that you've slimmed down, but you want a bit more muscle with that without losing any further weight? I would need to know, it's kind of contextual. I would need to know a few of those things to advise. Joseph says, what are your standards for simply fulling eating practices for appetite satisfaction? Simply filling eating practices, I presume that is Joseph. What are my standards for simply filling eating practices for appetite satisfaction? Well, I made a video on this very recently where I talked about the difference. You'll have to go back on my channel and find it. It's only 4 or 5 videos back, I would suggest. Maybe a little bit more, maybe 7 or 8 at most, where I talked about the difference between fullness and satiation. These are different things. So there is a difference between being full and truly satiated. I had a conversation with one of my clients recently, yesterday actually, who's having a lot of their potatoes in their diet right now, and potatoes are brilliant. But one of the potential downsides for some people, not everyone with potatoes, is that they're so filling in the moment that you do feel absolutely stuffed shortly after and during eating potatoes, but could you be hungry an hour later, 2 hours later? Some people have a problem with this when they have lots of fruit for breakfast too. It doesn't necessarily hit the spot like oats does. And whilst it's filling in terms of the volume it provides in your stomach, doesn't necessarily come with the calories to leave you truly satiated. Now, calories are not the only important metric for satiation. Satiation is also dependent on micronutrients and a couple of other things too, of course. And so that, and there are certain biochemical things happening as well. There are certain emotional things happening as well that can sort of distort your ability to read satiation as well internally. So that makes things all the more confusing. But I'm just turning over every stone here so you can see what satiation is actually, what it means and what it's actually dependent on there. And calories aren't everything, but calories are a big thing for it. So one thing I would say to you, and this is judging by the fact that you're on a vegan plant-based channel, because I see a lot of plant-based dieters plant food eaters who are often feeling full but not quite satiated, and usually this is a calorie equation and they just need to plug the gap and have a few more calories, maybe not whilst adding any more volume because they're already feeling full. So it would be redundant and actually harmful and uncomfortable to push them further, with that fullness. So that wouldn't be the answer, but the calories indeed would be. So maybe they take out some of those more calorie or less calorie dense foods, those more calorie sparse foods out of their diet, like the fruits, the veggies, potatoes, and they add in more calorific starches, maybe some nuts and seeds too, of course. Does that make sense? So, or less fresh fruit, more dried fruit, for instance, just to transition up the calorie scale there. So that's what I would say, Joseph. If you're really struggling with satiation, make sure that even if you're ticking every box of, good, healthy, plant-based foods, I've covered some staples here today, also make sure that you're ticking the box of calories. That would be a big thing to make sure that you're truly satiated. Now, then we get into the territory of, right, I want to lose weight, so I know about this calorie deficit stuff. Then it's, right, okay, you want a calorie deficit, but not so much of a calorie deficit that it's absolutely unbearable. So where's the middle ground on that? What can we actually sustain here? That, again, the problem is, Joseph, I realise the more I talk and the more I answer your question, the less actionable advice I actually give, because it's because I want to cover everything for you, my friend, rather than just give some rubbish answer here, like, eat more potatoes so you feel more satisfied. I want to turn over every stone, as I said earlier. But I realise as I talk more, it doesn't give you so much actionable advice. So in terms of actionable advice, think about your calories, because maybe that would help you if you're struggling with this right now. And, appetite satisfaction, there are foods that will hit the spot for you. There are some foods that, even though they're healthy, they're trigger foods for people, and people can't necessarily tap into their hunger signals as much when they eat those foods. So I do think that whilst there are good rules of thumb about which foods are high up on the satiety index, like legumes, like lots of vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, like oats, like white potatoes, these foods are very high on the satiety index. But having said that, maybe you've got a bit of a quirk. Maybe there's a bit of trial and error required, and you realise that you don't get that full when you eat lentils as if you eat kidney beans, for instance. So it is also worth thinking about you anecdotally and thinking, you know what do I feel good eating? What do I feel satisfied eating that also fits in with my goals and my weight loss or weight maintenance efforts here, my muscle building efforts here, whatever your goals are. I'm going to assume it's largely weight loss related since you're here today. But yeah, I think that is probably the analysis that needs to happen. So think a little bit about you and what works. Folks, I'm going to hit the road here. I do think there's a couple more questions, but I've got a coaching call very shortly, so I'm going to hit the road. Thank you so much for your time today. If you really enjoyed this, smash a like on the video, subscribe if you're just running into me for the first time. And as I said earlier on, if you are looking for a meal plan so you can action lots of the advice I share in these videos and actually have a done-for-you structure that tells you exactly what to eat, when to eat, with what ingredients, gives you the recipes, it's just like, bang, do, follow this. If you want that sort of plan, want that sort of template, check out my 21-day plant-based accelerator. The link to it is down in the description box below, and I'm going to post it in the chat once more here. Or just head over to naturalweightlossmastery.com. Thanks so much for your time today, folks. I will see you in the